Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. I usually start my videos off as I'm driving along, but today I'm in this 2014 Aston Martin Rapide S. So I thought I'd just share this with you. Are you ready? That sends shivers down my spine. It's made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. In fact, let me do that again. That sound is too good to only do it once. I don't want to sound too crude now because I like to keep this channel family friendly, but that noise, it does things to me. Anyway, vamos. One thing I've noticed about Aston Martins in general, whenever you see one on television or on YouTube, the presenter can't help but reference James Bond. They're either wearing a tuxedo or, it's just one pun or innuendo after the other. It's all a little bit predictable and tedious. So I promise I'll never do that. But, never say never again. The Rapide is a 5-door, 4-seat Grand Tourer along the lines of a Maserati Quattroporte or Porsche Panamera. It's been around since 2010, but in 2013 it received a mild facelift, some extra power and a slight name change. This model is now known as the Rapide S. There's a name to die for. I'd never driven or even been in an Aston Martin before, but ever since I was a kid, since I saw Die Another Day, I've loved them. And Halle Berry, but that's a story for another day. I love the DB9, I love the Vanquish, I love the DBS. Naturally, when my colleague bought this last week, I was really excited to get behind the wheel. Finally, after all these years of waiting, I could drive an Aston Martin. And I have to say, I was a bit disappointed and underwhelmed, for various reasons that I'll go into now. Straight away it feels well built, but it isn't particularly luxurious. The inside feels quite cramped, the sills are too high, as is this centre console, so you sat here and you feel kind of hemmed in. The windows are very narrow, as is the windscreen. When you glance in your rearview mirror you suddenly realise how long this car is. It's just over 5 metres long, so it just feels as though the sky is falling down on you. That wasn't meant to be a James Bond Skyfall pun, by the way, just in case you were wondering. It does, it just feels like you're being pressed down. It doesn't feel open or airy or bright. The boot isn't very big for a 5 metre long car. It only offers 317 litres of space. Yes, it has 2 rear seats, but they're not really suitable for adults. Tall adults anyway. They're quite cramped. The next little letdown is the key. It's the cheapest thing I've ever seen. It's shocking. Positively shocking. The remote key fob which opens my barrier at work, that's better built than this key. There's no Aston Martin logo on it either, so it won't impress anybody when you throw it down on the bar top of your local hostelry. I was a bit gutted because I wanted to love it. I love the brand, and I just wanted to fall in love with the car. And it didn't happen. Maybe it was a case of, never meet your heroes. However, I gave it the benefit of the doubt. Purely for the purpose of science, I've been using this car for the last few days and clocked up some miles in it. And happily, I feel like I've sussed it out. You see, I've always put Aston Martin in the same category as Bentley. In my mind, they were both iconic, terribly expensive, luxurious British brands. Having owned an older Continental GT, which was both luxurious and very easy to live with, I was comparing this Aston to that, which I now realise was a mistake. I was expecting this Aston to be as quiet, as refined, as opulent, as smooth and as soothing, and it really isn't. But that's my fault, not the car's. I think you've got to think of Aston Martin as like a British Ferrari, rather than a rival to Bentley. The Aston is more playful, more raw, more emotional, more theatrical. The Bentley separates you from the real world, whereas the Aston just enhances it. This is just so much more evocative. From the moment you put the key in, that V12 howls into life. The Bang & Olufsen speakers rise from the dash like a phoenix from the ashes. You look out to the wing mirrors and you'll notice that the brackets look like something that Brunel's designed. You can hear the sound of the engine working, and you can feel everything through the steering wheel. You can really appreciate the craftsmanship with the finely stitched leather dash and the suede headlining. It all makes sense to me now. This car is art, and there I was judging it as a car. What an idiot. What an idiot. One thing I've noticed about this car is all the attention you get. All of it's positive too. If you pull up in a Italian supercar, or a Bentley for that matter, people won't give you the satisfaction of looking. They hate you before they've even met you. Whereas with this, it's all positive. People stop and stare and point. For passers-by, this is exotic rather than flashy. It's just pure class. You get admiring glances from everybody. Young, old, male, female. You get the distinct impression that all men want to be your friends and all women want to carry your babies. Not sure those cyclists were as impressed. Let's talk about the design. Now, I know styling is subjective, so of course you're free to form your own opinion, but I may as well tell you what I think. From the front, it makes me have to cross my legs and bite the back of my hand, such is its beauty. The rear is very subtle and tasteful. Then we move down to the sides. Now for me, I'm not a fan. I don't think it works. It's just too long. It's not ugly, don't get me wrong, it's not an ugly car at all, but it is a bit ungainly. I think this is the problem whenever they try and make a four-door coupe. You're just asking too much. This sort of looks like a DB9 that somebody's photoshopped. Somebody who's not that familiar with Adobe. Under the beautiful bonnet is a 5.9 litre V12, which Aston Martin have called a 6 litre, because I guess it just sounds better. And what a glorious engine that is. It's by far and away the best sounding car I've ever driven. We are approaching the bypass, so that means only one thing. Pop into sport mode and let's see what this thing can do. Are you ready? Get out of the way, Golf Diesel. There we go. Oh yes. Listen to that noise. The gearbox is an old-fashioned ZF automatic. This particular one has 6 gears, but later ones were up to 8. I think it does a great job. No, it's not as quick as a dual clutch, but the changes are still pretty quick. And of course, you don't get any of that jerkiness or hesitation around town. This one creeps, as any standard auto will. And of course, you can pop it into manual mode for when you're on roads like this. The paddles are mounted to the column as well, which means you'll never forget where they are. Early Rapides produced 470 horsepower. Later Rapide S's were up to 560. Now, I know that's quite a big number, but it never feels that quick, to be honest. Because it's naturally aspirated, the power delivery is very, very smooth and very linear. So it doesn't throw you back into your seat like a turbocharged engine would. Nobody would ever drive a Rapide S and get out of it and say, what a slow car that is. But it's just not as quick as you might expect. The handling is superb. So much so you'll surprise yourself when you catch a reflection in a shop window, because it feels as you're driving along as if you're in a little two-seater. It belies its length and weight. This thing weighs around 2 tons, but it feels very agile, very light on its feet. The steering is superb. It's hydraulic rather than electronic, so it gives you plenty of feedback. It feels nice and weighty. One downside with that is it kind of tramlines. It follows the cambers and potholes and stuff on the road, so you might have to make more corrections than you'd think. The road noise is negligible. I don't know how this sounds on this mic, but actually in the car, it doesn't feel that loud. Certainly not as loud as a 911. So I think it does quite a good job of keeping the road noise out. The ride quality is much better than I was expecting. It won't leave you shaken or stirred. I don't have the patience for a car that's too firm or too stiff or too uncomfortable. I'm just not interested. And when I walked up to this with its massive wheels and its small tyres, I thought this was going to be painful, but it really isn't. I could happily live with this. On a twisty road like this in sport mode, you would just never tire of it. It's so purposeful. The interior is very nicely done. It all feels very well built. It isn't as opulent as a Bentley. For example, all of these dials aren't knurled like you'd expect in a Bentley. But it all feels very well screwed together. If you've ever owned a Ford or a Volvo, you will recognise some bits. But it doesn't detract from just how special this car feels. People often criticise the ancient Volvo sat-nav system, but thankfully because this is the Rapide S, it has a later version of that, which is alright. To be honest though, who uses in-car sat-navs? Everyone just uses their phone, don't they? I get this when I'm at work sometimes. I'll be on the forecourt and somebody asks me about a 2010 3 Series. Does it have sat-nav? Well, no, it doesn't. Oh, that's a shame. And I bought that if it had sat-nav. Well, just download Waze and use your smartphone like everybody else does, because that's much smarter than a 10 or 12-year-old in-car system. So if I were in the market for an Aston Martin, that genuinely wouldn't bother me. What would bother me slightly is the fact that there are so many buttons. It is a bit of a button fest. It's taken me 3 days just to figure out how to use the radio. As far as extras and gadgets go, you get heated and cooled seats, you get rear entertainment. That's about it. Oh, you do get a nice Aston Martin umbrella in the boot, which is possibly the most expensive umbrella I've ever used. I love the Aston Martin clock. I love the gear lever buttons here. Reminds me of my Fiat 500e. That's probably the first time anyone's compared an Aston Martin to a Fiat 500e, but they are very similar. One thing I'm not so keen on is the way that you start it. You take your very lightweight, cheap-feeling key, place it in the start slot, and push it all the way in until it starts. I don't know why they bothered with that. They could have just put a nice big start-stop button there and made the key keyless, because right now this key isn't keyless. You've got to press it to unlock it and lock it. For a car that cost in excess of £150,000 when it was new, it just seems a little bit odd. The key also doesn't have a keyring on it, so you can't place it with all your other keys. Although this is billed as a proper 4-seater, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Access to the rear seats is restricted. It's fine for kids, in fact I'm sure they'd quite enjoy it, but no adult will want to spend a serious amount of time back there. Used prices here in the UK for a standard Rapide rather than a Rapide S start at around £40,000, which is so tempting. That's the same price as something like a brand new 520 diesel. You could have a 6-litre Rapide. For a nice Rapide S with sensible miles, expect to spend an extra £15,000 or £20,000 on top of that. But still, it's a very tempting proposition, that. Thankfully, the gods of depreciation have worked their wonders and showered us with these sorts of gifts. It's worth noting, for much less money you could buy something like a Panamera Turbo, but they are ugly as sin, or an M5 or an Audi S7, but none of them are as cool as the Aston. None of them have that same brand appeal. Fuel consumption and general running costs will be reassuringly high. This thing will do 15, 16 mpg around town and 24, 25 mpg on a run. The tank holds 90 litres, so if you brim this thing with V-Power petrol, it'll set you back about 120, 130 pounds. All fairly standard stuff, really. Reliability-wise, now I haven't owned one of these cars, so I'm not exactly speaking from a position of experience, so I don't want to sound too blasé, but it genuinely wouldn't worry me. There's not that much that can go wrong. The engine and gearbox are featured in loads of cars over the years, and they are known to be quite reliable, if you look after them. You may have issues with things like door locks, window regulators, things like that, but I would be quite surprised to hear of something very serious happening. Parts will be quite expensive, but I think you knew that already. But I would seriously not have any qualms about running one of these things. If you think logically, there are no turbos that can wear out, like on a Bentley Continental GT or a BMW M5. There are no DCT or PDK gearboxes that can fail, like on a Porsche Panamera or BMW. All of that makes the Rapide about as simple as you can get for a super saloon. So, reliability-wise, I wouldn't think twice. And let's get it right, this isn't a car that you're going to do 25,000 miles a year in either. You're going to keep it in your garage and use it a couple of times a week. After using this for a few days now, I've got an overwhelming desire to own a V12 Aston Martin. But I personally wouldn't buy a Rapide because I don't need the extra seats in the back. So I'd pick something like a DB9 or a DBS, or, subject to a lottery win, perhaps a DB11. I need that V12 noise in my life, and as shallow as it sounds, I quite like the attention. Anyway, I hope that's helped give you a bit more information about the Rapide S. If you're new to the channel and you came here looking for information about the Rapide, there really is a lot to like. It's got plenty of flaws, this car, but crucially it's got it, whatever it is. The X factor, the wow factor, whatever you want to call it. The Aston Martin Rapide S has it. Thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know and I'll do my best to get back to you. I must say a quick thank you, by the way, to everyone who's visited my online store and bought some merch. I had a quick nosy and the orders have come in from all over the globe. It blows my mind that my hoodies and t-shirts and sweaters will be worn by people all over the world. So thank you. If you haven't checked it out, check it out now. It's highpeakstore.co.uk. Couldn't be simpler. So yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.